Hi, students. Welcome back. How are you? Very good. Okay, so I think last week I just want to check with you. Are you going to the tour to Everglades? If you are, please don't forget to submit your consent form. And we are going to start from here around 8:50 or 9 o'clock because we're going to start our program there at 10 o'clock. And it's a behind the scene tour, and we are going to do some experiments, measuring certain things over there, and also have a lunch. And we plan to be back to campus at 2 o'clock. I mean, leaving there at 1 o'clock, getting back here hopefully 2 o'clock. So if you are interested, I strongly encourage you to participate. It's not mandatory, but I strongly encourage you. Okay. Any question about the tour?
So how many of you have already been to Everglades?
Oh,
you
okay.
have most of you guys.
But that's the general tour.
Airport.
Airboat? Yeah, okay. Good.
Yes, but then it would be nice to learn about the science.
Yeah,
What they
science.
do over there. They do a lot of science related to wetlands, right? So how do you, actually quite surprisingly, they burn the wetlands quite often.
Burn, that's the topic of today.
Like fire, to think about greenhouse gas emission. But that's for the health of the wetlands. Can you imagine that? So if you check, like nowadays, we always say that California, like recently in Los Angeles, I don't know, see why. That I start?
Yeah, please start, yes.
Yeah, so nowadays, whenever we mention about wildfires, fire safety, we see the headlines that it's happening in California, it's damaging houses and everywhere. But in terms of fire frequency, but also the areas burned, in terms of land area, the Southeast United States is among the highest in the United States. So in terms of the land that's burned, I think ours compared to the Western United States is almost 3 times compared to their area. But our fires are not wildfires. Our fires are prescribed fires. So the goal for the prescribed burning is that if we don't control the land biomass, they're just going to grow excessively. It's the humidity, temperature, it is growing large mass. And then all you need for the wildfire is just a lightning strike. So because of that, so the fire management and also I think it's more related to Forest Service. They have to monitor the growth of the biomass and then they will zone different areas and check for the biomass, like how high the plants have grown. And then they will shoot these fireballs and of course pour some fuels over there and control the biomass. So I think this, you may think that this is contributing a lot of greenhouse gas emission in the atmosphere, but if you think about if we don't control them, don't manage them carefully, you not only generate greenhouse gas, but also it can threaten our human lives. Right? Especially Everglades is very close to Miami, so we don't want any property damage to our areas too. Okay. So coming back to this topic, so we're talking about burning, talking about combustion. So I think all of you guys have done the quiz problems and have gone through the lectures. So as you already see from the lecture, my name is Yang. I'm the CTO of Global Solutions Incorporated. Okay, so this is a consulting company. We focus a lot about energy policy. Right, so today we're just going to discuss about the biofuel incentives. What are biofuels? So why is it important and why there are also controversies about biofuels? So any questions until now about the video lecture and everything? So my plan is that in the beginning, we'll quickly go over the quiz questions and then we'll start to talk about the discussion problem. I'm pretty sure that each of you have some opinions already about the biofuel, right? And also about the directions that we should choose in terms of using biofuels, or promoting biofuel. Okay. Any questions? So far, so good. Okay, so first is the biofuels, right? So nowadays biofuels is actually playing a quite important role in our daily life. So how many of you drive a car to campus? Quite a few. Yes, you also add gasoline by yourself. If you haven't driven a car, maybe you already tried adding gasoline to your car. But whenever we go to a gas station, you will see these notice. Contains 10% ethanol, right? So I don't know if you ever wondered why they have those notices, especially those, some of those are just like stickers, you put it onto these pumps, right? So it looks like there are also new policies, because if the ethanol has already been there, we don't need to put stickers on these to notify people, right? These are some new policies. So why is ethanol there? So why do we put ethanol in the gas station? Just based on what you have learned from the lecture. Yes?
It's gas from overseas is expensive.
So it's from basically imports from
Importing
foreign,
gas
yeah.
is expensive.
Yeah, it is expensive, right? So it represents a reliance on the external fossil fuels, right? So that's why we add some extra fuel in there. Any other?
Yeah, so it's like, it's added to compensate the amount of gasoline that you want to input in your car, because we don't have an abundance in gasoline, and
Mhm.
it takes some time to take the crude oil and go through the manufacturing process gasoline, so we add ethanol to increase the abundance of like filling our tanks.
Yeah. So basically, it's just we're sort of mixing some chemical products with our existing gasoline, right? And then we're trying to add. Of course, we can't add in water because water, the fire is going to get extinguished, right? So we have to add in some hydrocarbons inside. And then it turns out that it's easy to add ethanol. Actually, very simple. It's just alcohol we drink. Maybe you guys can't drink yet, but it's very available to people. It's a chemical product, right? So then where is this ethanol coming from? Talking about biofuel. So nowadays, I think as shown in the lecture, so 95% of the total ethanol that's produced by the United States are from corn, from the biofuel industry. And as a matter of fact, right now, 40% of the corn we grow in the United States are being made to produce bioethanol. As you can see, the large scale of the production. Okay.
I just have a comment. I think about the corn that is grown in the USA is genetically altered and has a lot of additive chemicals when compared to the corn grown in Mexico, which that they consume daily. It doesn't have any additives. And I think that maybe what like that make like the corn that's grown in Mexico, because it doesn't have any chemicals or additives, will not be like as useful for gasoline, because the corn in the US has like a lot of like additives.
Yeah. So any of you come from Midwest? I mean East Coast. So I did my PhD in Midwest in Missouri. So Missouri, together with in above us is Iowa, and Minnesota, Idaho. So those are the major producers of corn. So whenever you drive by the highway, you will see cornfields on the left and on the right. Okay, so it's a lot of corn being produced. And also, as you said, genetic modification is a major thing in there. So in St. Louis is a major company that's producing seed. It's called Monsanto. You've heard of that company? So they produce agricultural supplies, and mainly it's about the seeds. So we once toured their company and saw that, they have these all automatic machinery. So they will, based on the corn seeds, right? So they will choose, like robotic arm will choose the ones that looks best, right? And take it out, and also take the tiny chip of it and also analyze genetic information. So they have this whole industry to do the genetic modification. It's not only about producing corn, but also making the corn to be more resistant to extreme weathers, right? To pests, to pests. So overall, to bump up the production of the corn. But overall, I think, I mean, as you said, genetically modified ones, a lot of them are being used for fuel production, but also there are non-GMO products, right? So for those ones, the customers will consume them. Right? So yeah, of course, these genetic modification or these technologies have helped a lot in producing the biomass in large quantity. That's why we can use these crops to make biofuels. Okay. All right, so now let's quickly go over these quiz problems. I think most of you, when I checked the results, I think more than half of you filled those in, and then all of you got the correct answer. So these shouldn't be very difficult problems. So first, what is the dominant source of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere currently?
See, fossil fuel combustion.
Fossil fuel combustion. Right, so this is what we were introducing this recorded lecture. So if you see, I mean, there are different sources and sinks, but compared to the different sinks or, I mean, different values of source and sinks, right? So the fossil fuel emission is actually the highest. It's the top one. So because of that, you're going to observe a dominant growth of the carbon dioxide concentration. And we're showing this graph here. So by the way, this is called the Keeling curve. It's showing you the carbon dioxide concentration that's monitored at Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii, right? So people do the measurement there mainly because it's away from urban emissions. So you're measuring what is mixed in the atmosphere. It's a clean environment. You can show the general global trend of carbon dioxide concentration. You can see that over the past 60, 70 years, the carbon dioxide concentration increased by almost 30%, which is very rapid increase. And if it's a linear increase, then we're probably okay with that. But you also see some of the exponential trend over there, right? So anyone can tell me why there are zigzags? Yes?
It's because of seasonality of each year, so spring and fall, so more plants, more.
Yeah. It's because of photosynthesis. So then a follow-up question is, well, if it's because of seasons, then the summertime in the northern hemisphere is going to be the winter time of the southern hemisphere. The winter time of the northern hemisphere is also the summertime of the southern hemisphere, right? So technically they should balance.
Are there lower fossil fuel emissions in the southern hemisphere?
It's related to the difference between northern and southern hemisphere, but it's not necessarily emission. It's not emission, it's actually the sink.
That's,
Yeah, yeah.
no, I'm glad.
Uh-huh. Any other guess why? I mean, theoretically, we shouldn't see these zigzags. So if you think about the land mass, right? So we're always talking about the globe, like the Earth is round, and we have northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. But in terms of land mass, we have looked at the globe before. Which hemisphere has more land mass, land area? It's northern hemisphere, right? If you consider, like in the northern hemisphere, at least Europe, northern hemisphere, right? Asia, most of Asia, right?
And Russia mostly.
Yeah, Russia considered to be mostly Asia, right? And
Yeah.
then like a small part in Europe, and then North America, right?
Yeah.
So Australia, and I mean, this is it's mostly near the equator region, right? So if you look at the globe, actually most of the land area is in the northern hemisphere. And then, of course, southern hemisphere, you have the Antarctica, but it's covered by snow, so there's no photosynthesis over there. So because of that, the carbon dioxide concentration is going to be dominated by the northern hemisphere. Okay, whenever northern hemisphere has photosynthesis, you just see the carbon dioxide decrease, although southern hemisphere is producing carbon dioxide here and there.
You mentioned equilibrium, so because of the change of the seasons. And you see that from the graph, it's going up and down.
Mhm.
Wouldn't the equilibrium just be equal that it's going up, down, up and down? That's at an equal state, but also an exponential growth, so. Even though it's like north and south,
Mhm.
and it's going up and down, still the up and down is creating the equilibrium on the graph. So it's like, it's compensating each time.
So it is compensating, but at the same time, you have emission, you have a source, right? You have dominant source. So although you can see it's going through these zigzags, but if both northern and southern hemisphere is producing more carbon dioxide, they're going to show this general trend of this going up, right? So, yeah, this is basically the time series of the carbon dioxide we're seeing. And as we said, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. It can absorb microwave. Microwave is heat, basically. We'll see that you at least observe a warming trend of the atmosphere. The second question, what is the major sector of that consumes fossil fuel? Yes, transportation, right? So I think in the lecture, I didn't show the exact values for these. So some of you selected the electric power fuel. So I will count both of them correct, but this is also the data until 2020. Right, so if we just look at the data of 2023, so this is a more detailed breakdown of the fossil fuels. We're seeing petroleum, natural gas, and coal, right? So it can go to different sectors. You see transportation 26.1. Now it's at least 2020, they two are comparable, but 2023 transportation is considered to be top sector that's producing or that's consuming these fossil fuel. And that's why there's this need of producing biofuel. You see the different definition of biofuel. We said that DOE, which is a major agency that's working on the biofuel, they just define as liquid fuel that's coming out of the biomass, that's produced by biomass. So basically, we're trying to make the fuel consumption in transportation into renewable energy. So that's a major goal. Okay. Third question, algae is regarded as the what generation biofuel? Third generation. Right. So I also have the picture here. First generation is crop. So it's basically sugarcane or corn. Right, we mentioned that. Second generation are cellulose materials. For example, the leaves. Like in Florida, we see leaves falling down, they dry up, right? So basically in the leaves, there are not so much of these sugar. Most of those are cellulose, but they're lignin, right? So the organics, that's the major composition of the cell walls for the cells in the biomass, right? So that's the second generation. Third generation is algae. Fourth generation is the waste. Of course, if we can make a major breakthrough in the third and fourth generation, then the problem solved. So I think I heard this saying that a lot of times, I think if you look back on the past several decades of all the different countries, there's always a thirst of energy. Okay, so people always say fossil fuels are not going to be reliable anymore. There has to be some limit of the fossil fuel from the ground, right? So that's why that's basically pushing people to try to find different sources of energy in case that the fossil fuel is not available to us anymore. Okay, the fourth problem, what is dominant biofuel currently produced in the United States? Bioethanol. So it said that almost 90% of the biofuel produced is bioethanol nowadays. And the bioethanol is mostly produced from corn. So although we're building this nice picture of biofuel that can be renewable, right? So the solar radiation, like trees, or not the trees, the plants absorb the carbon dioxide turn into coal, we further use that and we have this renewable source on and on, but I would say the fact or the unfortunate fact is that we're still using food to produce fuels. Right? So then we can go to the discussion. Okay, any questions until now? I've gone through these quiz problems. I'm pretty sure that you guys have done these. I mean, these are just quiz questions. So can anyone tell me what is the food versus fuel debate?
Like whether to grow crops for like biofuel versus like food or like
So why is that controversial?
I guess it's because we are, like some people think that we should be using our food resources for food because there are issues, like we've had issues in like food security. Things like that. So using it for fuel might be like contradictory to that.
But at least I would say this question probably first started from the United States because United States have large agriculture land area, right? The food that we produce is almost way over what we eat. We said 40% of the corn is just used for making the bioethanol. So if we don't use that for fuel, that's already way over what we need, right? So what do we do with those extra land agriculture? I guess that's some controversy over there because we'll talk about this overall because I also saw some different opinions based on your slide. Okay, so just by raising hand, so we were talking about which side do you stand? So how many of you choose food? We should prioritize food. How many of you choose fuel? Fuel, please. I think half and half. So what about you sit to different groups, different side, and then you discuss. And then after maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, we can come back and then we can just summarize the reason why we should be standing on the fuel side or standing on the food side. Okay, and then try to find the justifications. Okay. So food on this side, fuel on this side.
They're going to summarize
Maybe food
their.
on this side.
Food on this side.
Food on this side. Because then everybody over there is seeing.
Food, so.
So both of you are, if you can raise your hand, this side food.
Who's like just it's a necessity and while.
Well,
fuel is-
I'm fuel, so I can move that.
Yeah, food this side, fuel that side.
I think you don't have to summarize their points on the whiteboard.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, and we can like go like right on the points.
Oh, you can.
It'll be right.
Yeah, you can right over.
I'm gonna put my point. Okay, I think you'd be like starting.
It's not because it's not enough.
It's about food distribution. and
It's like
access.
we have some of the most food waste per capita. Like that's the issue, also just. It's a financial
There's
issue,
almost-
like
Yeah,
it's,
it's like an overproduction of food.
yeah, we have too much, like,
Yeah.
it's not because we're. Fuel. And even if there was like a food shortage, we have so much land in the US that's prime for farming that we could just use to grow corn. Like it's not, we're not using all this farming land we have. Yeah, so this is like, I'm sure we increased corn production specifically for fuel. We didn't, I don't think we took away farm production for, like, from homeless people. Like, we didn't take their corn, you know? So,
I think even if people are like opposed to the usage of corn because it is like a really prevailing thought. I think like there's other types of biofuels that I see like because there's so much agricultural waste that's like in this country, so it's better instead of like putting it on a landfill or like. There's probably also like a lot of being made,
Yeah.
so it makes sense to like. use it.
Yeah, that we don't have to like outsource to other countries. Countries, yeah.
So, for summarize it, like, always.
Food,
The better it will be.
So like a surplus of fuel, you like outsource instead of
and then all the things.
It opens up the pathway for like
I
innovation.
don't feel like American.
More,
So, like,
more,
American
investment in sustainable.
what? When they outsource.
No, it
For you, like, if we just gave
If it goes virtually
every-
undigested through your
all
body,
this
it's
extra
not.
corn, even for free,
Better.
that wouldn't necessarily be that good. I don't think your body can like not even digest it.
Yeah.
Alright.
So, the 3 bullet points is. Excellent. Insecurity is not, you know, it's not lack of.
Lack of food being produced, it's not food distribution, which is like a government problem, not like a science and innovation.
We should just like,
And then we'll.
like if the
your
issue is
point,
that there's a
yeah,
surplus
your
of
point.
corn.
Oh, I said that, even if people
Like grow other
don't wanna
crops, like
use
just stop
corn
crops.
specifically,
Like,
there's
just
other
surplus,
alternative
people are
biofuels
choosing
out there,
to grow
like
it.
algae
Yeah.
and
Like it doesn't naturally just
second,
grow.
I think like second tier.
Just grow less. And corn, it's even natural.
I think we should just like, people don't
I
like
know what
corn
you're
that
saying,
much.
corn. Yeah, no one. When's the last time you had corn?
Like, I honestly.
Thanksgiving.
Crops.
Making access to for food. There's a lot of water and resources that we don't necessarily not with the resources just to get chili dogs. For that capacity. That requires. Well, maybe you can apply, but you just be anti growing more fuel or growing for the fuel probably then that's
You guys have anything else?
I'm sure I'll come up with stuff.
We're good now.
Your gardening club. Did you guys meet as a group?
Yeah, we met yesterday.
I really wanted to go yesterday. I'm like very like boyfriend. I don't even know why. Like I had like 2 exams yesterday, I had a paper due. Like I don't know why at this point.
Yes.
Like we just started, we prefer you.
I'll try to be on that Instagram. Yes. Hope you know if you weigh in. All my basketball.
Okay, and each tag representative go over your objective. I will start from.
Let's go.
Fuel is a necessity and fuel is a luxury. And it requires many resources to grow a bunch of corn. And I think a primary point that we discussed is that there's no need to grow as much corn that's grown, like land could be used for other crops to feed hungry people. Ethanol is not energy efficient, it's bad for cars, and if there's more ethanol and gas in the engines, the cars are gonna go out sooner. And that's ultimately more wasteful if you think about it. Surplus of food can be outsourced, if there is all of this extra corn, apparently in the United States, we can sell it to other people. And local grown food is better for the economy rather than importing.
What about the fuel side?
You basically said we have so much corn. So you guys get up,
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
better.
yeah.
That was great.
um. You said we have so much corn in this country, like, it would be a good use since we have so much of it that we can put it to good use. We thought any kind of food insecurity that is present in this country is more due to like the amount of waste, food waste we have as a country, like we waste a lot and that is one way we could save food if food insecurity is an issue, kind of eliminate waste rather than, yeah. And then agricultural waste can be used for the biofuels. There's a lot of waste that comes just from the process of agriculture, the weeds, the secondary, biofuels. And then we lastly said that commitment to this type of, biofuel can open the door for innovation in the industry and kind of lead to maybe more efficient production of biofuel or better biofuels, stuff like that.
Yeah, so maybe I was thinking like, if we want to contradict our points, maybe I should limit the scope a little bit furthermore, because we're talking about advanced technologies of agricultural waste. Of course, if we can make use of the waste, that would be great, right? So we don't need to worry about the food waste or these energy utilities. So if we put it this way, so if we can only grow corn, okay, hypothetically, corn turns out to be our only food. Like the movie.
I don't
right?
like
So-
corn.
You know, like, if it turns out that we can only grow the corn, grow the corn, should we use it for food or use it for biofuel? I mean, food, I mean, the food
So,
we need. is
If we can
also
only grow corn,
for food, I mean, if our food source, corn is our food source, if corn is our food source,
if corn is our only food source,
yes,
should we like use it for biofuel or not?
yeah.
But if it's our only food source, then we have, as I was said, like,
And we can grow unlimited amount of corn.
if you can grow them, then okay, we should like make our houses from corn then.
Yeah,
I mean, in the context of the US specifically, we have so much farming land, yeah, like we said up there, the root of food insecurity in the US is not because of a lack of food. We have some of the most food waste in the world per capita. So that is one of the more pressing issues in terms of feeding people. And even if we did hit like maximum corn consumption, we can just grow more. We have some of the most farming, like prime land in the world. Especially for a crop resilient plant like corn, so I don't really think that's an issue. And I think the more that we commit to biofuel and ethanol or fuel, you know, that kind of lets us separate a little bit from the oil and gas industry. And, you know, like, I think Brazil has a really high biofuel, like cars that are run exclusively on ethanol, maybe not exclusively, but much higher concentrations of ethanol. And it's a lot cheaper than, you know, it might not be as efficient, but it's a lot cheaper than just diesel or petrol or, you know, just regular gasoline. So that's also something that is good.
any comments on the food side?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
I
Yes.
feel like, I don't really know how much corn an individual needs to intake to survive, but if we only ate corn, would the surplus of corn we have now in combination with other foods be enough to even help the human population? Because I feel like each person would have to eat a lot of corn. So now we have a surplus because we have like a diet that with variety, but if you take away that variety, a solely based corn diet seems like it
Yeah,
causes
so,
an
so
issue.
let me put it this way, so I think, right now, this is also, controversy in, let's say, the Congress level, okay, so there are different lobby groups. Some of them trying to prioritize food, some of them trying to prioritize fuel. So the point on the food side is, well, it's not only about, human, right? So the corn price also affects the egg price or the meat price, because we use corn to feed animals. Right, so if we produce more corn for the food for the animals, we can drive down the food price for other products too. It's not about.
Could you maybe put it into like supply and demand curve? Would that be like much more easier to explain? Like the more demand on corn and the more supply of crop, it would be easier to.
You have a point?
I was gonna ask, like, in biofuels, I don't know if you mentioned this and I forgot, but do we use animal feed corn or do we use like our corn that we eat, like for
So
biofuels, or
it's-
does it not matter?
It doesn't really matter,
Okay.
right? The human, like the corn we eat is only a special type, like nowadays if you go to the supermarket, it's like the super sweet
Yeah,
corn.
sweet corn,
And
yellow
then
corn.
there's also maize, right?
Mhm.
Maize is the more general corn type that it can be genetically modified, produce a lot of corn mass, right?
Mhm.
So then you can feed them, crush it and then send it to,
Okay.
feed the animals, yes.
So I kind of think that the people on the fuel side are like partially on the food side because specifically about their, like their point about food insecurity leading to waste. So like being on the side of like prioritizing food doesn't mean that we think that all crops should be routed towards only food. I think it means that prioritizing food is like, okay, we want to make sure everybody has enough food to eat, and we want to make sure that we're honing in on, like using food efficiently. So if there is a surplus of food, then finding ways to use that surplus efficiently. And then that like surplus could be used for biofuel. But like if you're only focusing on biofuel, then, or if you're prioritizing biofuel, then that can lead to like obvious problems, like people just not having enough food.
So you were saying that we have an infinite supply of corn, then the demand for corn would go down and would further like decrease the price of corn, which then will affect the food chain, and decrease the price of food overall, which will make food more accessible to the general. Right, but if we wanna like prioritize fuel, then the demand for food will increase and that will will make the price of food much more expensive. That's my plan.
So that's from the price side, okay? So then I could also be standing on the fuel side. And I would say that, well, question?
Comment, but you
Yeah.
can keep going.
Yeah, so I can stand on the fuel side that, well, we know that if we grow more corn, right, the price is going to get down. But we also don't want to harm our farmers. Okay, so it's not only about United States. So if you consider the food production, Ukraine and Russia, before the war, they used to be major exporters of
For wheat, yeah.
wheat, right? So maybe some corns too. So it's also competition for different countries, if every country is doing their agriculture peacefully, right? So, for example, corn, is not only for animals, we can also like use the ingredient to make different types of food. But some international companies, they will choose which suppliers to take their corn, right? So if the competition gets so bad that the food price, global corn price gets so low, then our farmers are harmed. Why can't we turn some of these corn to fuel that we can stabilize the price?
So you wanna,
Yes.
Some context that we don't have, all of these farmers who produce corn for profit, is there any other crop that they could be growing instead? Because that's a
I mean-
factor, why are we growing so much corn if the price is going down, why don't they just grow other things? Is it more difficult to grow other things?
That's still relatively easy. right? So in terms of the soil type in the Midwest, right? So it's like just flat plains, right? So it's easy for harvest. And I mean, if you consider the energy density of the corn, it's also relatively high.
So,
But there can be some extra type of crop.
so they do have a choice, they could be making crops.
They could be, but unfortunately, right now, most of the land is beautiful corn. And people are always expanding more farmlands because there's a profit. Right, because there's a market of biofuel. That
More of a
basically,
market than to feed people. And that I feel like is backwards.
yeah, I mean, it's market is more like the demand for biofuel. Basically, you're having a safe channel that's saying, hey, just produce more corn. You're not going to lose anyone. Because there's a need on the biofuel. Like right now, there's even lobbies saying that right now it's capped at 10% for bioethanol, right? So they're saying that let's push it to 15%, 20%. There are even cars that drives at 85%, and those are flexible fuel vehicles. Right, so I would say it provides a safe harbor for the farmers. Right, in case there are like instabilities, so that at least they stabilize the price.
I
Yes,
think the farmers won't get harmed either way, because if you think about it, I think we would prioritize a hungry human being over a machine that needs fuel. Because without the human being, won't like, the machine won't be able to operate. So, but the demand for the actual corn as a consumption for food, I don't think it will change either way. So even if they have excess or they have a shortage or they have, it's not gonna change because people consume food on a daily basis. So, like, necessarily, it's, I think important to food as the paramount priority in this situation.
yes.
So I think the situation as of now, to the best of my knowledge, is that corn that is grown to be eaten, like consumed by human beings. In the US, there are certain standards for how that corn is supposed to look, how big it is supposed to be. And you know, if it's like slightly deformed or it's like not like the perfect product, people don't tend to buy that. So there's a demand for like perfect looking vegetables, which I think it's a very America unique thing, but it's what prevalent here. So when it comes to like food consumption, that is what is in the market, that is what is prioritized. But as a result of that kind of, I guess, like beauty standard for corn, there's a bunch of it like that's wasted, like a perfectly good crop that is wasted because it doesn't look a certain way. And I mean, if that can be used for fuel, it makes sense because things can change in the future. Maybe corn won't be the most prevalent crop grown in the United States, but right now, the amount of corn and that is grown and the amount of farmland that is dedicated to the growth of corn, it makes sense to use all of the excess corn for that because we're producing a surplus. That we're like currently the whole world is producing like 1.5 times the amount of food we need. The problem with food insecurity is food distribution, which is like a government level problem. It isn't like an agricultural or innovation related problem. So it makes sense to use it for biofuels.
Your comments on this side.
I mean, I agree, but like I'm saying, the debate for like which one to prioritize, right? Like food or fuel. Yeah, so I'm still team prioritize food, but I'm not anti-biofuels.
Ultimately, food is scarce on this earth because the resources that we have are finite. They're not infinite. Like fuel has many substitutes, but you can't substitute food. So that's the end.
I mean, I just think like, I imagine corn production in the US was maybe not close 40% lower before the popularization of biofuel, but I imagine corn production was lower and we were hitting the number, like the production of corn that we were trying to hit for the demand for human consumption and animal consumption. I don't think any of us here, if there was a food shortage, would say like, yeah, let's keep pushing this much corn towards fuel at the same rate we're doing. Obviously, I think we prioritize fuel more, but I think where we are in the US, like we're in the US prime farming land, I think we have a surplus of corn and we can put it towards fuel. Right now, we are able to put it towards fuel. Also, in the same way that there are many alternatives to other types of fuel, there are many alternatives to corn. Corn is not a very nutritionally valuable food, you know, and so that's, I just think right now, we all definitely prioritize food more, but we've hit our target goals for corn production on the consumption side. And we have the ability to produce more and expand the corn production in the US to try to push forward alternative fuel research.
I'm just trying to make sure that we're commenting on the same aspect, right? So of course, there could be advancements. I sort of agree that, I mean, food is very important to us. So everywhere we should say that food is the first priority. But at the same time, if there's a surplus of food, right? So should we consider using the food for producing fuel or using the food for example, like we were talking about the corn, what about we just use more corn to feed more animals, get more eggs, right? Drop down the meat price, drop down the egg price. Yeah. It's a whole industry, right? So then,
Even that, you
Yeah.
have whole, like, you have a whole continent. Which their main source of food daily is dependent on corn. I'm talking about Central and South America. They use corn on a daily basis, make oil, tortillas, and like many types of food. So you have also that like growth rate. So you can harness an economic opportunity to sell the corn to the countries that have high demand on corn.
so then on this aspect, do you think we can reach? Yes?
Can we take like 3 minutes and like regroup with our group and just discuss?
Okay. Yeah. So if any of you change your mind, you can also regroup. Right?
What is the question? Like, what is the exact question that we're debating?
So it comes back to the conflict. What is the conflict?
Of which to prioritize?
But like GMO,
Like,
they're
based on your search.
freaking out.
It's bio.
Because they don't want corn. Our corn is like
From our owners, from like a control,
it's GMO.
like, is this?
That's what I'm saying.
I
Like,
think it's from your, like, your occupation, right? So I think the food or.
But I don't know if that's, I don't know if it's continent through South
Not
America.
more about which
No,
one.
Mexico does not.
We're limited by food.
But all like Mexican corn, like a lot of Mexican corn comes to the US.
More
And
about-
then corn is like selling out.
But is it reasonable to use food for fuel?
If you're talking about that, so we just end the debate right now. We're all gonna say food regardless. So that would
Or is it
just kill the debate.
But then this question, this controversy has been there
No.
for years, right, for decades. But then the definition, I think it comes back to the definition. What is a fuel, food versus fuel? Yeah.
Are there farms that are specifically grown only for biofuel, or is it only, they're saying that like there's a surplus of waste that isn't pretty enough? Obviously, they're using that, but is there also farmland being used just for biofuel?
So right
Because
now,
that's what,
40% of
it's
the
just, like, that's all they're
That's
doing,
just
that's
for
ridiculous,
biofuel.
that's insane,
40%
wasteful.
Is corn the only vegetable that people like?
corn and sugar, right, for example.
So then, again, so what is the debate for? It's like, it seems like
30
we're
hours
going in
every-
circles, talking about
Or not only corn, other types of food. Right, like sugar, is sugar cane okay? For this case, if we change that to sugar cane, let's say now in Florida, Florida we grow a lot of sugar canes. They're a major producer of.
Regardless of the product, I like the aspect which I'm talking about, something that fuels machines and something that fuels organic living people or like animals. You would prioritize the living thing over the machine.
But then you were saying that if I ask them and ask whether that's ethical to. But I will convert food to fuel. You said that it's It's not here. Why is it? Why is it? Because let's say that we don't control our food, right? We don't make full use of the food. And now, like there's, as I said, global competition of the agriculture, right? So let's just cut off the fuel production. We have this amount of corn. And it's not only saying that we have the surplus, because other countries could be growing corn too. And then our farmers are farming. Is that ethical? Is
So
that, you can't really predict that. What if there's war? Right, so.
Like
Or
a
drought.
war over corn.
No,
I mean,
a drought
actual
thing.
war. Right. So actual war that can drive the global food price.
So you were talking like.
Yes.
I'm confused, what was continuing?
So let's say there is a war over corn.
It's not over corn.
Prices go up
Yeah,
around corn
It's
and
about the
like,
price. It's
Yeah,
about price. Eventually it's about the
It's
profit that we make.
it's
So
about.
is it ethical that to say, hey, the farmers, the price, you can lose money? It's okay.
How
And you can't convert that. You can't, because that's not ethical as a global perspective. That's it, people in Africa are starving. Right?
How would they lose money? Because I think that, as we said, like, the demand for this product is not gonna diminish. People always want to buy, people always want to have.
There's a global surplus and.
And everybody has corn, everybody's happy.
The fuel adds
No,
value.
It's just.
Yeah, but fuel has a lot of substitutes, but food doesn't have substitutes. So even though if you're gonna say we're gonna have waste and surplus, we would have to then find storage solutions for it, not for us.
Well, another option. Well, like-
I think that if we're using this food and spending resources such as water, primarily like a lot of water usage on growing these crops, I don't think it's worth it because the fuel that's being created is only 10% of the fuel that's being put in our cars right now, right? So I mean, still 90% of the gas we're using is not efficient. So is the amount of water that's being put into these, like corn to grow, worth how little of a change it's making? Like you're using a whole lot of
So
water,
it's about
and
the
you're thinking
work,
about all
right?
the resources of
It's
the
about the work. But then on the other hand, people on the fuel side can say, well, this is alternative fuel. Like in the beginning, we were asking why do we add ethanol to fuel? It's about reducing the reliance.
But
on
ethanol's also bad for cars, like tying that back in.
Right now, if it's 10%, it's okay.
so like E85.
E85, it has to be special cars.
Yeah.
Flexible fuel cars.
So
Right?
that
And
would also like shift the market of the automobile industry to put more research and development.
Yeah, there are
into
instances,
our-
like,
Which is a good.
in the end, we're talking about the policies, right? Policies, these manufacturers, they can get tax cuts. Right, because they put more efforts in making new engines. Okay, so come back to this, right? Do you think we can agree that the topic can be, is it ethical to use food for fuel?
Yes.
Do you agree, like, that can this be a good question?
No.
So you guys are saying.
No, if it's an ethics thing, if it's wasted food, it's ethical, but if we're just growing food to make gas, I don't really think it's
Yeah.
ethical when people are starving.
Yeah.
Excess.
But like, how often do you, like, is it ethical to put 40% of the corn production onto the shelves of grocery stores and then let it go to waste and like completely
But see,
rot
that's
and
why
lose
the
all
farmers need to
value?
grow something else,
But,
just grow other things.
but the land is primed for corn.
But he said that they can grow other things too,
Yeah.
so why don't they?
It's a lot more.
I think it's a
Well,
bit more complex.
So right now, I mean, we have this situation, I think, yeah, eventually it's gonna be the next question, right? So it's about, should we continue to do this?
No,
I have an opening.
Yes.
So
No.
you said that like the land is prime for this, for.
It's enough of growing corn.
Okay, my uncle
Yeah.
actually grew strawberries in the middle of the desert. So it's not about me having the land that's prime for one vegetable or one fruit. It's I can find a solution to grow anything else. As I said, like my uncle works in the agricultural department in Kuwait, and he actually grew strawberries in the middle of the desert. Like where it's like 104 degrees in the sun. So it's not about me like having a land that actually is only prime for this particular, like vegetable or fruit, I can work around it, so. As you said, shoot, like they can grow anything.
If I may, it's less about like the technology or like the, you know, the procedure of growing another food. It's just the fact that so much of agricultural land in the US on like a mass scale is used for corn. And that is what is profiting the farmers. So I feel like it would be, obviously, there's gonna be like change with time, but as of now, 2025. We can't just ask farmers to come up with innovative solutions to grow other crops on land that is meant for corn.
Or even to reduce
Yeah,
Well,
the production, right?
farmers are profiting. I
Yeah,
think that's a
and-
good thing.
We're saying, there's like a lot, right, there's a lot of factors here, but if the government is offering tax write-offs for cars for, you know, promoting corn. Can't the government just instead maybe take a turn and say like, oh, we'll provide incentives to farmers who are willing to create less wasteful like farms, like farmers who will feed our country. That's a whole other level, but like why, like, it's also the shift of the government is incentivizing these people to grow corn. And that systematic structure is wrong.
So, yeah, I think this is now talking about policy. So, you know, the biofuel is something that I don't want to go too much into the politics, but as you can imagine, this is something that both sides of the party wants. Okay, on the Democrat side, I don't want to go too much, but it's about renewable alternative fuel. On the Republican side, it's about urban development, for agriculture, farmers. So that's why it has been there for a long time, starting from 1990s, right? Even now, like during COVID, in tax cut, like I showed in the policy, it was there, renewable fuel and biofuel.
That's right, there is like, sorry to cut you off, but if we say like I have a lot of corn. I don't have to just like necessarily use it for fuel. There's like a million ways I can do with corn that have a higher priority to use. Like, I mean, like for instance, like if you, let's say in Africa, they have like a lot of starving communities, and I have excess corn. If you're talking
So
about.
you're talking about the global perspective, of course, that's,
If you're talking about like an ethical
yeah.
question, there's nothing wrong with me just donating the excess corn I have to. Population that actually need it. So I'm trying to end the debate there.
Perfect, right, United Nations should be working on that.
Yeah, so.
But coming back to our farmers. So we all farmers benefit from this.
They're still growing corn because there's like on demand for corn.
would they rather sell it or donate it?
If it's donation,
If
then
they can buy it, they'll buy it. If they can't buy it, we'll donate it. I have excess corn.
No, the
I don't-
farmers producing the excess corn, how will you tell them that,
They're-
no, this is actually gonna go donation to Africa, it's not gonna be sold and you're not gonna pay?
Yeah, but there are a million ways that they can profit off, so I can say like, I'll promote maybe the farm that grew this corn. And then people will come because of good marketing, that this farm actually is supporting starving and. So there are like a million factors, but it's just that the idea of
If that was
wasting food,
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
but it's not wasting food, we're already producing the correct amount of food that we need, even more, it's a distribution problem.
You
Which
don't go to
Congress has to deal with.
you don't go to the grocery store and you're not able to buy food because the fresh food produce area is empty. Like you go to the store and you can't get food, you can't get produce because you don't have the money for it. Like people that are struggling with food insecurity, it's a financial issue. It's not because like they go to the supermarket and it's empty and there's no produce there.
So I wanna add some, I think there's like a miscommunication here where we're saying like, yes, we can produce a ton of corn in this country, but that doesn't mean like all of our farmers are sitting on like a fat sack of cash, like they have infinite corn and they can just do anything they want. It's still a tough, like they're working to produce enough for the nation. Like, I think the debate is more like, I don't know, I think there's a disconnect there, like, it's not like we have all this corn that's like, just don't, like, that we are wasting corn, but like, we can't just say, oh, we have enough corn to feed a whole country, let's just ship it off, you know?
I get what you're saying.
I just can't get over why aren't they growing other things? I know that the land is like prime for corn, but it's also prime for other things, like they could be growing other things. And that would lower, for the people in poverty, that would lower the prices of those things in the grocery store, if
So-
there's more grown.
So regarding why they couldn't do that, I think maybe this is a like cycle thing, right? So growing corn give them stability. Give them, because based on the current policy, there is a need for biofuel.
So,
They make money, at least they make money. Depending on what is the global supply, sometimes they can make a lot of money, sometimes they make little money, but at least they make money. But if you're alternating, randomly picking some crops to grow, it may happen to be that there's like a global surplus of some crops, and then they don't take much benefit out of, let's say, compared to growing corn, which is a stable source of profit.
so farmers just work with machine. Farmers are the unethical ones. And the government for forcing them to stick to that stability. By creating a
Yeah, they
system
like
where
the
they
farm-
have to continue to grow corn so that they themselves systematically is what it was.
You
And
can
all
see
of
that,
this.
well, this is the situation that we created for ourselves, right? Because initially we thought that biofuel is renewable, right? It's reduced carbon emission, but at that time, we're treating crops like trees. Initially, let's say, starting from the 1990s or 2000, right? So we're treating crops like trees that absorb carbon dioxide, right? You produce fuel out of it, reduce the dependence. But then later on, people realize, hey, it's actually using more energy than we thought. More carbon emission overall, right? And then the issue is, well, the independence from the foreign fuel is still valid. But we have devoted so much resources on this topic. So the thing is, well, should we turn back? Or should we continue? Right, so either way, some people are going to get harmed. We're sort of in this dilemma here.
But I think you're taking into account if we were living in perfect conditions. We're not taking into account like weather conditions, pesticides, like incidents, disasters that could happen on farms. We don't know what will happen like with it. So there could be a year that will have like shortage in corn, and since your fuel is reliant on corn, you won't have any fuel to do like your daily or required tasks. So if you want to take into like the amount of incidents that happen each year, you have to have a storage solution for the excess corn that you have.
Yeah, well, of course, these external factors will play a role.
What if somebody takes a lighter and goes and burns all the crop field?
It's just an unlikely situation over there, right? So, I mean, but on this point, do you think, and you're the citizens,
Yeah.
so do you think we can reach sort of something like a consensus?
I think it's fine the way it is right now.
Go on the way it is.
We make biofuel and we have food, so I don't see the problem.
What about you guys? More biofuel?
Nuts.
I think the process right now is
Uh-huh.
suitable for the amount of corn that's being grown.
Uh-huh.
And then I think in the future, the level.
But then just remember on the lobby side, people are still trying to, like, as I said, if you search online too, people are saying, well, 10% is not enough. Let's raise it to 15%, 20%. But on the other side, people are saying, hey, see the price of the eggs nowadays. I don't know if you guys go to grocery. So it's
really
because of the bird flu, not necessarily because of the food, but hypothetically, if you can drop down the price of corn or other crops, you can drop down the price of the eggs, make people acceptable to cheaper food. So these are the different sides, but we never know. We don't know what the situation might be. That's why I want to get you exposed to these questions. So the second one, I think you sort of talk about the incentive side, what we have right now. So any other opinions? Different approach? We're good. So that's the consensus. So we should keep what we're having right now. Yeah, so. Yeah, I think at least based on the responses that I saw earlier. I think some of you, probably the ones that submitted earlier, were saying that oh, we should definitely prioritize food. And then I prepared this additional question. So should we drop bioethanol? Right now we're having this 10%. Yes,
Yes, we should drop it.
okay, stop producing bioethanol
Not stop, but like,
gradually.
I think bioethanol should only be created from the wasted corn that would be sold on the shelves. Like, I don't think there should be land growing specifically to create bioethanol. Personally.
What do you guys feel?
I
No,
feel like we shouldn't because, if we don't incentivize, like alternatives to fossil fuels, then nothing's gonna happen. We're gonna keep burning fossil fuels. So I feel like it's worth, just investing efforts into fossil fuel alternatives in general.
mhm. So, yes,
I just have a question about like the ethanol levels, like in gasoline,
Uh-huh.
that's a maximum
um,
number, like they wanna raise it to 15 or.
yes,
That number is a maximum,
that is the.
or is it like there has to be that exact amount?
I think it has to be exact amount, so like 10%, yeah, 10%, like we mentioned there. So if you check, it's not exactly 10%, I think 10.8, 10.9. Right, so overall, if you check the data there, so if it's 15%, it's overall, it's like 15% of the fuel will be ethanol. So. Yeah, I mean, under the ideal situation, if technology advanced so much, like, I mean, the environmental chemical engineering. So there's this synthetic biology method of trying to convert the biomass, just the waste, right? When you mention waste or leaves, or algae, if we convert these to bioethanol, there's no problem. Definitely, we're not going to eat those things, for sure, it's not food source. But the current situation is sort of trap us to this dilemma that we're incentivizing something that are actually doing more harm, seems like doing more harm to our environment. Right? So then I have this additional question, should we drop bioethanol? So if some of you say yes, or gradually reduce bioethanol, so then what could be the resistance? That there are people lobbying on both sides. So it's mainly for the fuel side, right? So what can be their justification? Stop that. What is the resistance?
To be like the farmers.
Have to take good care of farmers. Others, yes.
If there was no bioethanol and like the gasoline that we put in our cars, would that significantly raise the price of the gas?
It could be. It could be. Right. So right now it's 10%. We cut that off, or gradually reduce. Right. Yes. Yeah, you go ahead.
Are there statistics on how much worse or better, well, we know it's worse, how worse, how cars work less good with ethanol, like that it's less efficient than gasoline? Are the carbon emissions and the cause of like less miles per gallon?
So,
Is that
I mean,
equitable?
in terms of mile per gallon, for sure, it's going to reduce. So the fundamental reason for that is ethanol is a simple molecule, right? It's 2 carbon, 1 oxygen. So technically, the fuel that you want should be pure hydrocarbon. If better, you can remove the carbon, should not remove the hydrogen, only the carbon, right? If you only have carbon, that's coal. Coal has by far the highest heating value compared to all the different fuels. Okay, so we prefer gasoline with hydrocarbon mainly because it is liquid, definitely cars can't burn coals directly, right? So hydrocarbon still has high heating value, right? So if you replace that to ethanol, then by mass, the heating value is going to be lower compared to the gasoline. Yes,
Because can you guarantee that bioethanol won't have any effects on emissions, climate change, air quality, combustion?
yeah. So that's the few slides that I introduced in the recorded lecture, right? So some of the cars, there is a reduction of the pollution, some of the cars not. And then in terms of the bioethanol, there was a comparison of the greenhouse gas emission and also particulate emission. Right, if you compare the price,
Yeah.
it's actually higher compared to the fossil fuel.
But this is in like the short run. Do you know like what will happen after like the long run, let's say like plus 100 years?
In terms of what?
The consumption of bioethanol. Like so this, you're saying that it has like much less harm on it because you're comparing it to gasoline. But if you would use it like solely bioethanol, we don't know what will happen like after a period of time. What will have like.
I think overall you will know. That's why we do the life cycle analysis. Right, so the life cycle analysis, it's also in the recorded lecture. So it considers both the production of the corn, right, and also fertilizer, water. So you convert that to actual carbon emission. If you put in fresh water to water, right, irrigate the farmland, right, to produce the fresh water, you need energy. Energy comes from fossil fuel. So you can convert everything to greenhouse gas emission. So it turns out that bioethanol is higher in terms of the greenhouse gas emission compared to the fossil fuel. This is mainly because like oil, petroleum, you just dig it from the ground. You don't need to water anything. You don't need to, maybe transportation is an issue, but it has a high energy density. Just put it in a barrel and then ship it wherever you want. So considering the entire cycle of producing the bioethanol, the greenhouse gas emission is actually higher for bioethanol. But still, we're not saying that this is pure bad for the energy portfolio, because still you're reducing the dependence on foreign fuel, and also you're basically diversifying the energy portfolio. Yes.
Also what, I know you have to, like, once you have the corn, you use the ethanol, you also have to distill it or put it through some sort of treatment facility to get it into the biofuel, right?
Yes.
What percentage of the greenhouse gas emissions comes from that process?
That, I don't know, you probably need to check for some data on it, right? Basically, it's a chemical plant, chemical refinery. So right now, the process to produce bioethanol is from the bacteria. Go through the bacteria process, produce the ethanol. It's like fermentation, the way people make alcohol. All right, so talk about these resistance. I think at the end, we still maybe have 1 hour, half an hour. So let's do a SWOT analysis. Do any of you have heard of SWOT analysis? Okay, strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Okay, so we can go one by one. Right, so what are the strengths of biofuel? Yeah, we talk about emission, but then I think it's less emission in terms of growing the crop. We consider life cycle, it's actually more emission for bioethanol. But then if you're talking about different generations of biofuel.
General.
Yeah, in general, it's I would say, yeah, we can say it's less emission, yes.
This might be a small one, but doesn't adding the bioethanol to regular gasoline increase the octane rating?
Yeah, the octane rating is related to related to the, like, whether the engine will knock.
Yeah.
Right, so.
I think that's really small.
benefit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then overall, if you have high level of ethanol, bioethanol there, it's actually bad for the engine. Yeah, so at least for current cars, it's like that. Yes,
I think, I'm actually gonna say that,
uh-huh,
but, additionally, I think it's a good halfway point between, renewable resources and non-renewable resources,
Mhm.
like, sources of energy, sorry. Because obviously, for a lot of places, putting like solar cells or installing like a wind turbine, those are very, very expensive endeavors, but biofuel, you can grow crops anywhere. So I think it's a good, kind of like a compromise. So it's not an automatic 360, like 180 shift to, renewable sources. But it's like it's very doable with the current state of the world.
so that's why we call it renewable.
Yeah.
Right, so compared to the fossil fuel is not renewable. You need thousands or millions of years to make fossil fuel. Right, but biofuel, you just need a season, one single season to make it. Right. So coming back to the strengths. Any other strengths of the biofuel? Yes, right, farming, agriculture, industry, right? So I would say it also reduce the dependence on foreign fuel, right? Fossil fuel. What are the weaknesses? Biofuel.
In the life cycle, it has more emissions than
Yes.
fossil fuel.
Uh-huh. Bad for cars and at least current technology. You put too much of ethanol in there, it's bad for cars. Other weaknesses?
Stop advancing technology for a while. The more we advance, the more problems we're getting.
Mhm. Yeah,
Put a pressure.
so that's why we're talking about incentives, right? So there should be more incentives towards third or fourth generation. of
Set
biofuel.
regulations, right?
There are currently there are, but then third or fourth are not necessarily related to agriculture. So right now, the incentives are still mainly targeted at farmers, agriculture. Okay, other weaknesses? We said that growing them needs a lot of water, right, fertilizers. So it's actually bad for the environment. Opportunities for biofuel?
Introducing more competition in the fuel industry, it's a huge business.
Yeah. And also for these newer generation of biofuels, algae and waste, like threats. So what might wipe out biofuel? What can be a competition, major competition? Or let's say, what may damage the biofuel industry?
Maybe like a drought or.
Yeah, it depends on the climate, right? Others,
If other renewable sources of energy become subsidized or cheaper to produce, it would kind of negate the point of biofuels.
so now, I think maybe last year, there's this major news about fusion breakthrough, right? So I think it's happening, it actually happened in the United States, that for the first time, we're getting positive energy out of a fusion plant. Okay. It's a small step, but maybe the first step of many major technology breakthroughs. So if you consider, if we really achieve fusion energy, right, then we have a limited amount of energy. So by then, we won't need to care about growing crops using all the land areas. Right. Other threats? Say policies, right? Policies also will be a threat. If we suddenly stopped all the incentives, then the entire industry might be gone. Okay. All right, so that's it for this class. Any questions, comments? We're good? Okay, then that's it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Hope this is helpful.